Good evening. This special meeting of the Board of Trustees for Socorro ISD will come to order. The date is Monday, November 6th. The time is 5:31. We do have a quorum present, and Ms. Gardea is joining us virtually. We'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody please stand and join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Next item was public comment for agenda items only, since this is a special board meeting, but there were no speakers signed up for public comment. So we'll continue with new business. Item 4A, consider approval of additional construction material testing services for the SAC 2 from Terracon Consultants, Inc. Ms. Bettis.
Good evening, President Nahida, members of the board, and Dr. Carmen. My name is Vicki Bettis, Chief Financial Officer. This evening, we are requesting consider approval of additional construction material testing services for the Student Activities Complex 2 from Terracon Consultants, Inc. This was the agenda item that we had at the previous board meeting that we postponed for this one. And I'd like to invite Lily to give us a little bit more information on this, if you don't mind.
Good evening, Board President, Mr. Najera, board members, Dr. Carmen. I'm Liliana Fierro, Director of Facilities and Construction. So in regards to the Terracon's additional services, I know some of you had some questions in regards to the unit prices or cost. So just to give you a little bit of history or what happened on this contract that was approved by the board back in 2021. Here is the
Can you hear me okay? Ms. Gardea, can you hear me okay?
I don't think so. She can hear us.
Try one more time, Ms. Gardea. Ms. Gardea, can you hear me okay? All right. Oh, well.
Board President Nahida, members of the board, and Dr. Carmen, in order for Ms. Gardea to participate in the meeting, she has to be able to actually see and hear the discussion. If she can't hear, she can watch, but she's not going to be entitled to vote or participate in the meeting.
Okay.
Understood?
And I know that I know we can hear her. I was going to let her know that we could hear the typing
I
on
don't
the
think
keyboard.
she
Ms.
can.
Gardea, can you hear me? Ms. Claudia, is there any way you can call her, please? Ms. Gardea, can you hear us yet? So what we're doing is we're trying to confirm connectivity with the control room and Ms. Gardea. Say something? Hi, Ms. Gardea. Testing, testing. Can you hear me okay, Ms. Gardea?
Yes, sir. I can hear you now.
Perfect. Okay, can you come back and join us then on camera?
Yes, sir.
All right, sounds good. All right, and so the only thing I was gonna say is the chattering of the keyboard was interfering with the speaker. So, but now you can hear us. So,
Yes, I can
all
hear
right.
you.
All right, sounds good. And just to confirm as we go along the way, what Mr. Blanco just told us or reminded us is if we can see you, you can hear us, we can hear you, you're allowed to participate and vote. If any of those happens to fail, then you can still listen in, but you won't be able to vote. Okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, so
Okay.
I think to confirm each one as we move forward, when something does come out to vote, can you just make sure that you vote verbally so that we can make sure that you can hear us and then we can hear you each time?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Thank you very much. All right, now let's continue.
Okay, I will start over, Ms. Gardea, so you can know what's going on right now.
Thank you.
So, in regards to Terracan additional services for the student activities or SAC 2, so going back to 2021 when the proposal was approved by the board, here's in the slide that you're seeing, it's the original proposal where you can see that 338,600 has a proposed estimated cost, okay? As you can see in letter D, compensation, there's a note that refers to that this is only a budget estimate and not a not-to-exceed price. May factors beyond our control, as weather and other contractor schedule, would dictate the final fee for our services. Now, I just need to make clear that when Terracan received the drawings, we're not at 100%. As I mentioned in previous meeting, they received the drawings maybe at 75, 80%, and the cost was based on the drawings and specifications received in June 18, 2021, as described in project information. Now, between that period and when the construction obtained the grading permit and the building permit, that was in March 8 of 2022 and May 23 of 2022, there were changes requested by the city. There were revisions to the drawings. So once the drawings were 100% completed, that's now when the contractor can provide a schedule, additional information to the QAT company, to the estimate. Now, so the 100, the additional 184,568, that is based on the coordinations, meetings between HKS, who's the architect, Terracan, and Baines General Contractors. And this is the amount that will finalize the contract, that will finalize the project, okay? Now, we received, previous to this cost, we received a proposal of 265,483. That's when the coordinations meetings started with Terracan. So again, once we have those coordination meetings, the proposed final estimated cost is 184,568. At this point, do you have any questions?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
The plans were finalized when?
The plans?
Yes, you said they were at 75% and this contractor just bid it on a 75% complete of plans.
I believe so. I don't have the exact percentage that was submitted to bid, but I know for sure that those drawings were not 100%.
And when did they receive the final plans?
They received it in June, and it's in your slide, June 18, 2021.
So they waited over 2 years to say that they're short. As I said before, if they underbid, they underbid. That's not our problem, and the taxpayer should not be burdened with it. That's it. No further comment.
Ms. Fierro, this is materials testing, right?
Yes, sir.
So what happens if we don't do it?
We delay the project and we have to stop the project because it's part of the testing, as part of the inspection from the city requirements.
So the testing is a requirement from the city, and if we don't test, then construction stops.
Exactly.
My concern is, why would Terracon bid knowing that they don't have the full plans, are not completely done, and I mean, if I own a business, I mean, I guess I'm gambling, but the original budget was 338, half of that is roughly about 170, or, yeah, 175, that's which, and you're asking for an additional 185, which brings it up to that 523. That's still a significant amount that they're asking for compared to what they should have been a little bit more well-prepared, or significantly more prepared, but I mean, this is something that they should eat, if knowing that the fact that they didn't have all the information at hand, or they shouldn't have bid on it, period. That's all I got.
Ms. Fierro, is this routine? I mean, did we mess up, or does this happen, you know, if we were to review, say, construction contracts, maybe for the highway, or, I can remember Eastwood High School was rebuilt not too long. Would we see some of this similar process where bids are done on partial plans, and then, you know, as things get finalized, then some of the costs increase because when the plans are finalized, then there's additional items needed?
Yes, to answer your question, Mr. Najera. So basically, this is part of construction. That happens it could happen in any type of project. Now, this is a consulting services. Now, we not necessarily have to have a exact amount or lump sum amount for QET testing. It could be less because maybe we can see numbers below the estimated cost. But in this case, because of the size of this project, we need to consider that additional testing is requested by the city, part of the specifications, final drawings approved by the city. So I understand that's why facilities do the due diligence and do the research. Like I mentioned, the amount that was requested before, it was 265 because it was just an estimate. So based on the final drawings. But after conversations and meetings with HKS, the architect, and Baines, this is the amount that we feel, everyone, SISD included, we feel comfortable that it will be enough to complete the project. Now, we not necessarily have to use the full amount. Anything, if we have any funds available at the end, that will come back to the district.
Okay, Ms. Fierro, and then just confirm for me once again. If we don't approve this today, it's gonna come back next month, and if we don't approve it next month, it'll come back 6 months from now. It'll come back until we do decide to allocate funds for this testing, because construction will stop until we decide to provide funding for this mandated testing. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So originally, you said it was 265, that was original, and now we pretty much doubled the price from the original estimation, which was 265, and now we're at 523. I mean, like I said, that's still pretty significant. I mean, if we're telling the public, hey, this is what we're gonna build this, and we go way over, that's, I mean, we already went over with SAC 2 as it is significantly, but I'm just putting it out there for the record. I mean, original 265, and now we're at 523, that's pretty much almost double the amount.
The original amount is 338,600.
Correct. But you also said originally when they had set down, there was 265.
Yeah, there was an estimated cost. Yes, sir.
Questions? Either we do it or decide that we're no longer going to complete this Act 2. Motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
I second.
A motion to approve made by Ms. Cindy Naheda, second by Mr. Guerra, who I heard first. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and the item passes. Thank you, Ms. Fierro. Moving on to the next item. 4B, consider approval of student activities complex 2 change order number 1 to increase the contingency funds.
Good evening again. This was another agenda item that was postponed from the last board meeting. And we had a couple of questions in the last board meeting. We wanted to make sure that we had enough time to convey the information to you and you to make your informed decision. So I'd like to invite Lily again. And we do have some presentations with this.
Thank you. Okay, I know there was a lot of questions about this contingency for additional funding request. So just to clarify, as per CV local, administration is coming to you to get the approval on the additional funding, not necessarily on the items, but I would like to go through each item so you understand what type of items we are trying to get approved on. So let me change the slide. Okay, this is the contingency change request log that, as you can see, most of the items are already been approved. For item 1, if you want, I can go with a detail, and then if you have any questions, please let me know. So number 1, that one is basically the forms of the concrete walls. As part of the cost analysis of value engineering, those concrete walls were supposed to be with no form, just plain concrete. And I can show you here very quick a picture right here. So in order to have a better look on these walls, it was decided to bring back the original specifications for these walls. So that's why we have this item. Again, this item has been approved and the contractor did the work. Number 2, that's part of the request for 2-way cleanouts at each manhole. That one is part of the standards, SISD standards. That one it's been done by the contractor, and it was requested by SISD. Number 3, that is a request for the authority having jurisdiction. That stands for the AHJ. The fire marshal requested during the plan review additional fire hydrant and a site fire line. And those were part of the 100% review plans. Number 4, that's the gable walls. Originally, those were taken out of the scope of work, the original scope of work, and a credit was given to SISD. Yes, I'm sorry. There you go. Item 4, the gable walls. So that one, once the SISD received the other option from the architect, the cost estimate was higher than the cost for the gable walls. So it was decided to go back to the gable walls in this case. That was approved, and as you can see in this picture, it's already done. Number 5, that's the synthetic turf. That one was changed to Hellas in order to have a a product comparable with the rest of the fields at the high schools. Number 6, that one is a demolition and disposal of the existing Southview Street main entrance asphalt and redo with the new 2 inches HMAC. And here's a picture of what it was done. And this is basically the other entrance to Site 1. Not through Bob Hope, but through the aquatics entrance, near the aquatics, going to the tunnel at Site 1. So that one, it's been done. Number 7, option 2, that one, let me go back to the list. That one, number 7, number 8, and number 9. Those are related to the same request from the city after the plan review, and this is in regards to the ponding area. So as you know, the pond was enlarged, almost twice the size, and in order to have a safety area, we needed to install fencing. And number 9, it's a credit to eliminate the rock at the bottom of the pond due to dust storms. The rock was going to be covered with sand. And here's the picture of what Baines General Contractors is doing at this moment. Number 10, that's costs associated with the repairs of the gas line below the existing SAC 2. That one is unforeseen condition, was not part of the as-built, so we needed to lower the existing gas line that was exposed. Okay, that's number 10. Going to number 11. This one is the district requested to delete 7 out of the 15 monitors for concessions. This has been approved, and like I mentioned, it's a credit. Number 12, this is revisions to the Chatwood area at for the East Rock Wall. That one, we voided. The general contractor did the work, not cost. Number 13, the contingency deduct is for the review and approval of 2 proposed new site dumpsters, which will be located on the southeast corner of the new stadium. This option excludes gates. District requested to have additional dumpsters areas, and this is the request was from Athletics Department and Maintenance Department. Number 14, that's the regional design did not include the proper drainage in the patio area by Fine Arts, and that concern was brought up by the contractor, and after discussions with the architect, this is the proposed cost, or was a proposed cost to do the drainage. Number 15, this one is for the regional design did not include power source at the field level for future events. So that one has been done, and it only provides the pathways, conduits to install outlets or anything that has to be with the electrical requirements at that level. But it doesn't include the wiring or the electrical outlets, the equipment. Number 14, additional floor drains for concourse area for Fine Arts building to allow for proper drainage in the outer patio area. Oh, I'm sorry, I believe that one I already discussed. 16, the perforated pipe at both seating areas. This one, the original design didn't include the type of drainage underneath the concrete seating areas. This has been done in order to proceed with a construction schedule, and it was needed for drainage purposes. Number 17, the roof hatches size increase from 3x3 to 4x4. That one, it was a request from the authority having jurisdiction, in this case, the city of El Paso. For press box glass upgrade, that one, the press box glass specifications did not pass the structural engineering calculations, and due to this, the architect had to provide a thicker curtain wall system, and the curtain wall is basically the storefront, okay? The manufacturer does not fabricate the intended optic grade thickness specified, and this is why the architect had to change the glass color finish to a system that matched the engineering calculations, which was the clear glass system with low E coating. And basically that will match with the window color that we have at the Fine Arts building. So the next list is the forecasted items. This item has not been approved. These items are being reviewed by the team. It's ISD, HKS, and the contractor. Item 1, this is to complete the electrical work at the field level. And this is for future events, and it was requested by maintenance and athletics department. The overhead door at storage. So following the same concept that we have at Site 1, the overhead doors are needed for Site 2 as well. That's why this is a change. Why the architects didn't include it in these drawings? That's directive that they received from previous administration. So now athletics and maintenance department requested to have the same product as we have at Site 1. Number 4, reinforced shear connections. During construction, the architect requested two additional load supports to the west building. That is the press box building. Sidewalks for parking lot south of Site 1 towards tunnel. That one, it's not a requirement. This is just, again, it's been reviewed. It's not a requirement, but it's something that we can do for the safety of our students, teachers, community. And I will show you a picture of here. So basically, it's just doing a ramp that connect that existing sidewalk to the tunnel of Site 1 or towards the Site 1. Okay, so it will be between that sidewalk on white and the Site 1. And again, this is not a requirement. This is something that if we have the funding, I will recommend to do it, but it's not a requirement. Let me go back to the list. Number 7, this is basically the epoxy coating for aesthetics. And this is for the terrace stairs. It's not a requirement. If we can do it, we'll do it, but if not, it's not. It's just for a better look of the area. And this is at the press box building. Number 8, addition of 2 flumes at shot-put area. This is a recommended item since it's for drainage purposes. The regional design did not include those flumes. Architects requested to be able to drain water out of the space. Wayfinding for site. The regional design did not include any wayfinding. And wayfinding is basically directions where the areas are. Restrooms, concessions, press box, things like that. If we decided not to do it now, that's fine. It's not a requirement, but it will cost us more. Number 10, the screening space between Site 1 and Site 2 to switch to 1.5 inches HMAC overlay. That one, we are looking into various options for this space to have probably artificial turf, new asphalt, an area that it will look nice and especially for the students and community. Now, this cost is just if we want to go with only asphalt or concrete, right? This is the amount 231,000. If we have concrete and artificial turf, it could go lower. For item, where am I? 11. That one, it's a fire marshal request. The controllers for heat trace wire, fire sprinkler coverage under stairwells. We have to do this one. It's been required by the fire marshal. Number 12, the fixture L14, the specific inches has to change to another brand or type of fixture. This one is still under review. Probably we're not gonna need to replace this type of fixture, but it's just, we put it on the list just for if we have to. But I don't think that's gonna be a problem. Item 13, the scoreboard metal panels and railings modification. That one was part of the original scope of work, but after the value engineering cost analysis, a credit was given to SISD. But now, because of the structure and to cover the back of the scoreboard and have railing for the stairs and to have safety, a type of protection, this is the amount that it will require. And again, it was part of the scope of work, but now we're just trying to bring this item back to the scope. District for item 14, district canopy. That one, I have a picture for that one. So this one is basically to cover the canopy that you see there, and it's more for maintenance purposes. It's not included on the drawings, but it will benefit our maintenance department if there's any trash or even water. It will help us with the drainage as well. Item 15, ASI 6 changes to light fixture, exit lights. Oh, I'm sorry. There you go. Item 15, that one was not part, the exit lights were not part of the original design, but as you know, those are a requirement for from fire marshal to give us the occupancy certification. Item 16, the roller shades at Sector 3 West Building Press Box. That one is installation of roller shades to fill in window gap at Sector 3 storefront. Basically, the architect did not include that portion, so we just adding that side of the roller shades. And I believe I have, so you have an idea. Right there, so the area in blue, purple, that's the area that's, we have the gap. Okay, so this is the last item of the forecasted items. Do you have any questions?
Yes, ma'am. I have a question that maybe you can help. I'm noticing on the notes on a lot of these items, it's stating the original design did not include this, or the original design did not call out for some of this stuff, or they weren't included. Should this stuff have been included in the original design? Or is this HKS saying these things will be better? I mean, why weren't they part of the original design?
And that's a perfect question, Ms. Nakira. And with this project, these items are part of errors and omissions. Drainage has to be part of the original scope of work. It will be up to the administration to decide if the architects have to pay the cost. But at this point, that's why we have contingency, so we can move forward on the construction schedule. But at the end, of course, we can coordinate with the architects on those items that are specific out of the errors and omissions.
I completely understand the ones that are being required by the fire marshal, but I don't know if we're here and let's say, I'm sorry, which one, if what we currently have designed is sufficient, or are we going for the Taj Mahal? And that's what these additional expenses are. That's where I'm trying to see the difference. You know, are we just adding stuff that would make it great when it's already really good?
No, and basically we focus on those items that we have to do as part of the code requirements, the CRE review, the inspectors, because sometimes the architects submit the drawings, 100% drawings for review, drawings are approved, but during inspections, the city requests other things. And it's not necessarily that the architect forgot to include it, it's at that time when those items were not required. That makes sense?
Yes, yes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
But you're including both of them together here in this.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand
You're
your question.
including both what we have to have done because of any code improvements with other stuff that's, oh, it's nice to have.
Yes, sir.
Why don't you separate them? $1 million is a lot of money to set aside. And again, it's just like the previous vote we had. If somebody falls short, it shouldn't fall on the district. You know, this is $1 million. We had it with Ben Narsbeth when we had to build those shells, the 11 shells that were empty of the classroom. You know, we spent $3.2 million out of general fund for that, which it was a bond project. We should have used this million to fill that bond project and leave the general fund alone. But we're mixing the money around, and I don't agree with it.
If I may add, so there are a couple of items on the list that are going to be required, and I can understand the concern with the dollar amount. That is absolutely understandable. We looked through the list and checked to see which ones we felt were non-negotiables because it was either based off of something that the city was going to require or that we absolutely needed, not so much a want. And so if $1 million is a lot to take in right now, I completely understand. We do have a dollar amount that is like a cutoff amount. Without at least $500,000, we might not be able to be prepared for any kind of emergency that might happen. Because this is not just, this list is not everything that may or may not come up, but we do need an amount in case something does come up. If there is another permit, if there is another requirement, and we have no contingencies, it's gonna stop the project, quite honestly.
Well, it didn't stop the project because you brought it up back a couple of weeks later for a special board meeting. Focus on what is required by code and everything else, and let's just get this project built. And then if anything is a nice to have, then we'll worry about it down the line. If there's other contingencies that must be changed because of code or whatever that comes up, then you can bring that to the board and say, hey, you know, it's gonna add this. You know, we're gonna have to add this because the code changed. But it looks like you have everything covered so far. You know, Baines brought it up and said, this is what we need to do to code. Okay, separate it, and then we can move forward with that.
So at that point, if I'm not mistaken, you are requesting that they become change orders because the change orders do come to the board. This request is for a contingency increase, and the items that are done with the contingency are not at the discretion of the board. They are at the discretion of the superintendent. So in transparency, we are giving you all the information so that we can have, you are absolutely aware of everything that is going on. But if the board prefers, we can do change orders, and I can almost assure you that we will not meet the May deadline because we will have to be waiting at least another month to get the change order approved by the board. But that is entirely up to you, sir.
We've had time. This project wasn't started yesterday.
You're right.
And we've had time, you know, and I just hate seeing these holes in what we say, well, we're gonna build this for you guys. Oh, but we're gonna need this. You know, we're gonna need that added, you know. You guys didn't even order, you know, put in the bond, the lunch tables for East Lake Middle School, you know, we have to pay that out extra. And that's the problem we have with the bonds. There's all these little holes keep coming in. You know, another 181,000 because, oh, this guy didn't properly, he bid on a 75% contract. That was wrong, you know, and now we got the taxpayers to have to pick up the 181,000, 84,000. This is wrong. No, make it a change order. That would be, it would come before the board, and you don't have to hold us over the barrel and saying, well, it's not going to get done. Let the taxpayer knows what's going on, or else this next item about the future bond, it's going to be the same questions. You're going to have the same holes in that, and the future taxpayers are going to be like, why didn't they tell us before? We're going to be in the same spot now.
Thank you, sir.
So I still have concern when it all adds up. It's like $100,000 here, $1 million here, 500 here. It starts adding up to a big amount. So I do agree that, I mean, $1 million is quite a bit, but I agree with Mr. Castellano, and I think if I'm understanding you correct, sir, I think what he's asking is, okay, the forecasted contingency should just be what we actually need versus what we actually want. So the forecasted contingency, I believe, should come back to is what we actually need and remove what we want. And if at a later time we can have that discussion of what we want, then we can have that conversation. But right now, I understand the city, the county's requesting, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts around that period, and it's going to have to get done. I understand that aspect of it. But I agree with Mr. Castellano that, you know.
So going back to what you just said, sir, this agenda item is for contingency amount, not specific items. The board policy, your board policy states that when we are doing construction, the contingency is up to the board. The individual items are listed for transparency purposes so that you are understanding where we're coming from and where we're headed, but those items are not for approval. Those are at the discretion of the superintendent, sir.
So, Ms. Perez, at the moment, all we're going to vote for is just $1 million for contingency, not for those items, correct?
Yes, sir. It is either going to be $1 million or whatever amount you agree upon. It does not have to be the full amount. If we are looking at what is needed and what is wanted, needed is $500,000. That will get us what we need based off of this list and nothing more.
It should have been presented like that, and I believe it should have been presented as a change order, because we received other change orders to approve, and that way the board has control of the projects. We answer directly to the people.
Which items here are needed?
Looking at list 1 through 16, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9, 11, 13, 14, 15, and 16. And the total is approximately $461,000, which is where the $500,000 comes in.
Could you repeat those?
Yes, sir. Request change numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9, 11, 13, 14, 15, and 16. And so the needs, for the most part, are based off of what the city is requiring from us. There are a couple of items on there, such as wayfindings, that it's not needed, but we're going to have to do that at some point. We will end up spending money at some point. At this point in time, we're spending bond money, and we are in such a wonderful place with our investments that we can pay for it out of bond proceeds as opposed to local funds later on, because it will come back. We will need it at some point.
Motion to approve the $461,000 for the contingency.
Second.
Discussion. The amount that Mr. Barrera requested, if if it's not enough, the rest of it will be in change orders?
That is going to be just enough to take care of what we need. Any additional items will not be able to be taken care of by contingency. It's not going to stop the process of the construction, but if there is something in there that is going to be of a better quality to our students, we will not be able to include it.
So you can't bring another contingency back just like you did right now?
We can, sir, but we can bring the amount, not the the items that we're
But you
bringing.
can bring forward the change order.
That would be up to, the superintendent, the attorney, and our facilities committee, and we can discuss that internally before we come back to the board.
So as I look at this list, I mean, those that you didn't think or weren't listed as necessary, I mean, I'm looking like number 5, sidewalks for parking lots south of SAC. It means if we don't put in parking lot or sidewalks right now, we're neglecting an entire portion of the community right now. Like, if you are outside the press box at the SAC right now, if you're not parking in the parking lot right next to the press box, if you have to park on the outskirts, then people are having to walk in the parking lot because there's no accessibility, there's no sidewalks on that edge, et cetera. Why are we doing that again? We're excluding speed bumps. If anybody has ever gone through the SAC,
Yes.
anywhere from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the evening, I mean, I've had a car almost come at me head on, you know, and epoxy coating. What we're gonna have, number 7, epoxy coating. We're gonna have is, in 3 years, is a proposal in here to get those areas epoxy coated, and someone's gonna ask, why didn't we do this when we built it?
Correct.
You know, and so,
You are
I mean-
correct. And going back to it, it is the quality of the overall building that we're sacrificing if we are lowering the amount of contingency. And quite honestly, if we're talking about contingency, it should be approximately 3 to 5% of the overall project. At 58 million, that should be about 3 million. We were only at 1. We are asking for an additional 1 that is still well below the, not required, recommended contingency amount. So I do think that we are being conscious and frugal about what we are requesting. But again, this is quality for our students, for our community, and I'm open to any other questions.
Wasn't our original contingency already more than, I believe it was 2 million before, but because we ate it up to,
You're correct.
okay,
It
so
was
the original was
2.5.
not 1 million.
No, the original was 2.5 after they value engineered, after they lowered some of the prices and some of the costs so that they could make sure that we were within budget. That was lowered to $1 million.
original contingency was 2.5 and we lowered it to 1 million.
Correct.
And as we go through this, you know, and I see this all the time in construction. I can tell you, as an example, someone getting a house built, right? If you suddenly decide that you want to put a pool in the backyard because, you know, you don't want your brand new, you know, house that you're going to live in for a lifetime, you'd like for it to have a pool. Well, in order to do that, if you're going to lay the concrete out front, you need to be able to get the concrete truck in the back, and the only way that you're going to be able to get a concrete truck back there is if you reinforce that driveway with sufficient strength so that it can get back there. If not, you're going to do it again.
And now we need a
Right.
pool cover too.
Right. And then, so those are things that change as the design's going on. I can see some of these, like, for example, the district building canopy top deck cover. You know, we don't have to put a canopy over those doors, but then what's gonna happen when it rains is the water's gonna go inside those front doors, especially,
Correct.
you know, we tend to have rain and wind here in El Paso, and so that's gonna get in there, and so we're gonna start then fixing those floors, because the water's gonna seep in, those door jambs, et cetera, are gonna start to rust. You know, I mean, so as I look at these, like, I know these upgrades or these contingencies that are listed here, you know, it's not because we want to, they're functional. It's not because we want to make them pretty, you know?
Correct. Again, the quality of the building, and you're right, it will
Right.
come back to, well, why didn't you just do it the first time around?
So do it right or do it again.
Ms. Pettis, will you expand on what you mentioned a little bit earlier about our investments and where this $1 million is coming from to cover these?
So when we talked about the $1 million, my first thought was, oh, that's not unreasonable. Just in the last 2 quarters, we increased our bond overall total by about 1.2 million just in 6 months from our investments. So if we're worried about where the money comes from, it's quite honestly going to be part of our bond proceeds. So our investments have been doing absolutely wonderfully. So this is not going to come out of general fund. This is going to come out of bond funds.
2017 bond fund.
Correct, yes. Now, if we don't do some of these items, like I said before, they will come back. They will eventually want to add the speed bumps. Something, God forbid something happens, but they will add speed bumps, and then that will come out of general fund.
Mr. Nahara?
Got that? Go ahead.
I think that our community deserves the very best, and I think that we need to be proactive and not in the future reactive and say, why didn't we do? They've been waiting for SAC 2 for a long time, and I think it's time that we give them the very best that we can, because they do deserve this. I know Mr. Castellanos made a point a little while ago regarding some tables, for example, patio tables at East Lake. We don't want the same comment to be made about SAC 2. Like, why didn't we add this to protect it or to better serve our community? I think it would be in the best interest of our students, of the thousands of people that will be utilizing SAC 2, to give them the best, because that's what they deserve. And if we are in a place right now where we can do this, I'd like to motion that we approve the 1 million.
Okay. Only problem is we already have a motion before us. So before considering any other motions, we have to vote on.
I want to amend my motion.
Okay. So, before we consider any other motions, we have to vote on this motion. It is Mr. Barrera's motion, and he just said he wants to amend it, so he can. But remember, as in previous times, we will have Mr. Barrera's motion. Whichever side wins is the prevailing side is the only one that can then make a subsequent motion. Is that correct? To reconsider. There you go. All right, Mr. Barrera.
So I'm gonna make my motion to leave it at 461,000 right now, but on the, November 16th board meeting, can you provide us with the proceeds that we will receive for the bond, so that at that point we can also put it on the agenda to give you the remaining 539?
I'm sorry, I cannot predict how the investments are going to happen from one quarter to another, sir. The investments will not end until December. So it would be absolutely irresponsible of me to tell you how much money we're going to be making in future investments.
You just told us 1.2 million.
Correct. Do you want the last 2 quarters that were?
But that's what you're gonna use to pay for, right?
That is an anticipation of what we can expect over the next year or so. But for me to give you an actual number of how much we're going to get, that would be irresponsible of me, sir.
But you just gave a number.
I gave a number referencing the last 2 quarters. So I can give you a number from the last 2 quarters on what we got, and we can use that amount. But for me to tell you exactly how much we're going to make in the next 2 quarters on investments.
So from those last 2 quarters, we can't use that amount to cover the contingency that you guys are asking for right now. That's what I'm asking.
Oh, that's okay. Then yes, that's fine. We can do that.
Okay, so in a week or 2 weeks from now, can you show us those proceeds from those last 2 quarters, saying that that's what you're going to use to cover, and then we can come back and give the additional 539?
Okay. Yes, sir.
That's my motion.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion by Mr. Barrera. It is only for the 416. K.
461.
461.
Back in a week and a half, 2 weeks.
Consider the other items. Okay. Motion by Mr. Herrera, second by Mr. Castellano. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
No.
Okay, I didn't catch it correctly, so can we verbally, Mr. Castellano?
Aye.
Aye.
No?
No.
Aye.
And Ms. Gardea?
No.
Okay, so the item does not pass. 4-3. So the 4, if they want to reconsider, they can, correct?
I make a motion to approve the item as stated at $1 million.
I second.
Motion made by Ms. Nájera, second by Ms. Gardea. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so just to confirm, I believe we had 2 opposed. Did I miss anybody on opposed? Okay, item passes. Thank you, Ms. Perez and Ms. Fierro. Moving on to the next item. Consider approval of contract amendment for the Skyward Student Finance System, RFP number E2339.
Good evening again. So we have originally brought this over to the board. However, during our implementation phases, we have noticed that there are some components that we will need. The original approval of this board agenda item was for a very specific amount, so it's not like we can just go and increase it, so that's why we are coming back to you tonight. And at this time, I'd like to invite Ms. Ramos.
Good evening, Board President Nájera, members of the board, Dr. Carmen. So I'm here this evening just as Ms. Perez presented. We do have an additional change or a change that we would like to make to one of the modules. When we purchased Skyward, or when the board approved the purchase and move forward of Skyward in February, one of the optional add-on modules was called Employee Import. At that time, it was our belief that that was a module that was the applicant tracking system. As we have moved toward the implementation, we've noticed that we now need the full-blown module of the applicant tracking, which is currently being managed and maintained in Tyler Munis. So with the transition into the full-blown module of applicant tracking, there is a cost difference. The credit that we're going to be applying, if you approve, would be the $12,281 on an annual basis for the employee import, which was already included in the original scope. So the only difference that you'll see is a difference of $23,601 per year in order to upgrade or to move into the applicant tracking in lieu of the employee import module.
Questions?
Motion to approve.
I second.
A motion made by Ms. Nájera, second by Ms. Gardea. Discussion. Ms. Ramos, are there any other Tyler modules that we own that do not have their corresponding module, that we have not already purchased the corresponding module in Skyward, or is this the only one?
At this point, this is the only one that we have identified. There are other Tyler modules that the district is utilizing. For example, our transportation department is using a Tyler module, but we have not explored that in Skyward as of yet because the system works independently and is not part of the ERP or the SIS.
I have a motion made by Ms. Nájera, second by Ms. Gardea. No more discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So unopposed by Barrera and Castellano. Ms. Gardea, you were aye? 4?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Aye,
item
yes.
passes.
Thank you.
Was she for or against? Her voice came in late.
I was 4.
Okay.
Right. So item passes 5-2. Ms. Perez, don't go anywhere. 4D, consider approval request for demographic study through cooperative strategies.
Good evening again. We brought this agenda item when we initially did the facility assessment. They are the company, Cooperative Strategies is the one that did the facility assessment. We also had brought a couple of other items. If you recall, there was a discounted amount for additional services, demographics being one of them. And so we are requesting, considering that we are discussing the possibility of a new bond, we would like to have solid numbers on demography. We've noticed that the numbers that we have internally, they are good. They're good for 1 year. Demography study will give us 10 years of our current economy, our land, and our potential for what kind of student income we should be expecting to see. So the request is, I can tell you that it is under $100,000. However, it was originally denied, and I don't want y'all to feel like I'm just pushing this in there without consulting with the board. The amount is not stated, but it is for $60,000. And again, this would be in 2 phases. One of them would be the geographical area of Socorro ISD, and they will give us a demography information for that. And then the second part will be the amount of students incoming, outgoing by feeder pattern. Any questions?
But this is only good for 1 year?
No, actually, the information that we have internally with our demography is for 1 year. So we can predict internally here at Socorro ISD, we can talk about how many students are going to be coming in for the next year. But unless we have an overall economy study, we wouldn't be able to predict past that. And if we're going to have good numbers for any information regarding a future bond, I would love to have solid numbers that we can look back on. And I do believe that it was questioned on whether or not we had a professional demographer come in, and the answer was no, but we would like to.
Question,
Yes,
is
ma'am.
the 60,000 the discounted amount already, or is we are not gonna get a discount because it's being brought back?
He did mention that it was the discounted amount. I need to go back and make sure, because when it was discounted, it was in a bulk. So it could very well not be, but I don't recall the original amount.
Ms. Pettis, why wasn't the cost to the district included on the board agenda item? I mean, our board agenda item, it's blank.
Oh, you're right. This one is because we were trying to get the information from the vendor, and they sent it to us very last minute. The amount is on page, give me 1 second.
30.
Correct, page 30.
Correct, if I could clarify, it says the 60,000, but yet it also says plus travel. So it's not a complete amount, is it? The way that I read it, because it says plus reimbursable expenses.
Correct, you're correct.
So it's not just 60K.
And those expenses are listed on the next page, standard hourly rates. And this would be out of local funds. However, if there was a bond, we would reclassify those as bond expenses later.
Ms. Pettis, so I just want to understand this correctly. So the proposed fee is 30,000 for each of 2 components. I believe the hourly rates are just to identify what the standard hourly rates would be for the people working, but those are incorporated or rolled into that 30K fee, that 30K for each one. The reimbursable expenses, at least in my experience, when they ask for reimbursable expenses, typically that means travel. So airfare,
Correct.
hotel, meals, rental car, fuel, et cetera, which, just depending on how long they're gonna be there, could be, typically for each trip, again, and depending on the person. I mean, it's like $1,000 per trip, et cetera, so. And I think that's what they're asking for as far as reimbursable expenses. So the reimbursable expenses are out-of-pocket costs associated, say, with travel.
On top of the 60,000, that's correct. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I have had an issue with other reimbursables that have come up without being requested either by us or even given permission. And so we will keep a really good log of whether or not they've even told us they're gonna come out, as opposed to them possibly abusing that, because I am not okay with that, to be honest.
And the projections you said would be a 10-year projection, right?
Correct, yes, sir.
Any further questions?
Mrs. Pettis?
Yes, sir.
So this is to help us for the bond, if we want to do an upcoming bond, correct?
Correct.
So 2011, 2017, we never did this. I think, my personal opinion, I think it's a waste of money. We could do our own assessment and save the $60,000 as far as boundaries. Ms. Macias, you should do that back in the day. So I think that we could do it ourselves
Okay.
and not waste time on going this route.
And I know that we have Mr. Juan Jaime here. We did have a demographic study, but it was part of the bond, correct, Mr. Juan Jaime? Yeah, so we did have it with Templeton demographics, sir, just for clarification. And then from there, Juan Jaime did his magic and make sure that it was correct every single year.
So Ms. Macias, again, for we have previously had a demographic study done, and then as we move forward through the years, Mr. Juan Jaime, with his expertise and knowledge, just confirms that each year to make sure that we're still on track and consistent with the numbers that we're using.
That's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Juan, do you remember when we had Templeton? Was it 2017? It was right. Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot.
Jaime, will you stand, please?
Will you-
Introduce yourself.
Good evening, Juan Jaime from Technology Services. Yes, I think it was about a year or 2 years before the bond, the 2017 bond, that we had the demographer come in.
So then we had data roughly for 10 years from there, so we have it for 2027, más o menos.
Yes, so they do long-range studies, usually 10 years out. So they take a look at the housing market at the time and give us a little bit more information than what we have in-house.
I mean, when was the last time that you looked at their numbers, and are they still consistent for the forecast?
With Dr. Cruz, we looked at it about a year ago, and they were a little aggressive, so I think ours are a little more conservative in-house.
Any further questions?
Mr. Nahida, does the demographer have to be out of town? Do we have any locally?
That's a good question. Actually, that service was bid out, and so we are limited to the people that have bid in, and I do not recall, Gabby, do you recall if there was anybody local? Okay.
Yeah, there was a couple of firms who may have those services.
And just because, again, I'm going to give you kudos again. You'll give me $5 later, Juan. Did you look at this to see if it has all of the information that you would need moving forward? Reside, attend, all of the projections especially. So were you able to look at it?
Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Jaime, yes, you did look at it, and yes, it does include all the items you need?
Yes, we looked at it, and it does include all the items we need.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Further questions? All right, if I don't have a motion, then the item dies.
Motion to approve? Mr. Juan says it's good.
Get a second, then we'll go to discussion. Okay, nobody seconded the motion. Ms. Nahida, you have a question?
Ms. Pettit, as they were saying, our last demographic study was for 10 years. So it's still in, if they did it even in 2016, it's still in effect if we go for the bond in the next couple of years, correct?
So if I can just interject, Daniel Esquire, good evening, everybody. A couple major things. That demographic study was done prior to COVID and prior to the interjection of the charters that we're seeing now. So our landscape has totally changed since then. So that data really, it's not informative for us anymore.
Many variables have changed.
Motion to approve?
I second.
Well, there was a motion by Ms. Maribel Macias,
But
nobody
nobody
seconded.
seconded. Oh,
No one
wait.
seconded, so that motion should die.
So Ms. Macias made a motion and nobody seconded it, and you went to further discussion. Motion is no longer effective because it didn't receive a second, but somebody else can make a motion at this time if they want to. Thanks.
So that's what happened. Does everybody understand that? All right, so I have a motion made
I won't
by,
take it personally.
motion made by Ms. Nájera, second by Ms. Gardea. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I'm sorry. Ms. Gardea, were you for or
Aye.
against?
4.
Okay, so then that makes 4 in favor, 3 against. The item passes. All right, thank you. Moving on to the next item, 4E. Consider approval of a resolution to nominate or appoint an individual to serve on the El Paso Central Appraisal District Board of Directors for the term January 1, 2024 through December 31st, 2024. As a reminder, the previous person appointed to that role was Mr. Mena, and that board typically has a representative from the Socorro School District serving on that board.
Correct. So we are requesting a recommendation for a nomination or an appointment, depending on how EPCAD wants to deal with that one. And there is a resolution on the next page that states your nomination or appointment will be XYZ as voted. And then that will go from January 1st, 2024 through December 31st, 2024.
Make a motion to approve Mr. Michael Nájera.
Second.
Sorry.
Motion made by Mr. Guerra, seconded by Ms. Macias. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The item passes. Congratulations to me.
Congratulations, sir.
All right, moving on then now, we go into the board workshop. A discussion and review of Facilities Advisory Committee findings and recommendations. Dr. Carmen.
I have a question real quick, Mr. Nájera.
Sir.
I asked that an item be placed on the agenda, the Velazquez versus SISD to be placed on the agenda for the next board meeting. Was there a reason why it wasn't placed?
It's the next regular meeting, sir. So it'll be on the
Next regular board
15th.
meeting.
Great. Dr. Carmen.
Thank you, President Naida, SISD Board of Trustees. This evening, we are going to share some information. When the Facilities Advisory Committee came to the board, as you recall, presented what the committee had discussed, made a recommendation to the board. The consensus from the board is that they wanted additional information and time to consider before considering whether or not to call a bond for the future. So what we are proposing is that in this workshop and 2 subsequent workshops, we will go through the information, the slides, everything that was shared with that appointed committee, so that the board feels comfortable whether you decide to move forward as presented, not move forward at all, or somewhere in between. So we met with the Facilities Advisory Committee 5 times prior to them coming to the board with a recommendation. We believe we can fit this into 3 meetings, 3 workshops, and you have, I believe at the dais, you should have a binder, and that binder should be the exact information that the Facilities Advisory Committee received. In addition, the slides we're going to present to you are what we presented to the Facilities Advisory Committee. I think tonight there are 2 updates, one on one slide and 1 additional slide, simply because of the change in timeline, but we'll point those out. Other than that, we want to be transparent and just share everything that we share with that committee with the full Board of Trustees so we can look at moving forward. So this evening, we want to present the information that we shared on the enrollment history and growth management, including our profile, a history of bonds and SISD, in-depth information on the last bond 2017, the growth over a 5-year period, how we manage growth internally, projections of growth, current enrollment for 23-24, and then the new construction recommendations that were made. In a subsequent workshop, we want to bring back to you, pardon me, the full facility assessment that we did on 36 buildings of our older buildings, 35 of our older buildings, the safety assessment that we conducted on every campus within our district, transportation, technology, all that information in a second meeting, and then a third workshop with the board, and at that point in time, discuss the financial impact, any legal considerations, the survey that we gave to our stakeholders, and then the actual rankings again from the Facilities Advisory Committee. So you're all familiar with our 23 through 27 strategic plan. Specifically, what we're looking at tonight in our 4 priorities will fall under priority 4, operational transparency and equity. That will have transparent and efficient processes to ensure equitable distribution of our district resources. And the strategic objective within that, to ensure we have systematic, long-term facility maintenance and expansion planning. This is the timeline of our meetings with the Facilities Advisory Committee. You can see the 5 meetings. They reported to the board back in July. At that point in time, had the board wanted to call a November election for a bond, it would have had to have been made by August 21st. Should this board decide they want to consider to call a bond for the May 24 election, the last day to do so is Friday, February 16th. That last line is in addition to the original slide. That was not on the original slide for the Facilities Advisory Committee. That's an addition for tonight's meeting. Looking at the district facility profile, just looking back, district is over 60 years, been around over 60 years, one of the fastest growing school districts in Texas. Back in 1982-83 school year, we had just over 6,000 students. Jump forward about 11 years there, 17,000. By 2010-11, SISD had over 42,000 students. 21-22 enrollment was 47,000, and the current enrollment as of the meeting with the Facilities Advisory Committee was just over 48,000 students, with a projection to break 50,000 in the 27-28 school year. At the time of that meeting, we had 50 total campuses. Of course, since then, we have opened up East Lake Middle School. So instead of 10 middle schools, we now have 11, 51 total school campuses. The average facility age of our buildings is 20 years old, and 31, so 62% of our schools are 20 or greater. Quick bond history. Back in 1982, $10 million built 3 new schools, an ed center, and gave some campus additions. 3 years later, it took $30 million for 4 new schools, some campus additions, and Montwood High School property. 3 years after that, this community passed a $50 million bond in 1988 that allowed for 7 new campuses, some campus additions, and some pre-K renovations. In 1994, it took $70 million, and that got 5 new schools and some campus additions. By 2000, $120 million bond got 9 new schools, campus additions, other expansions, and improvements. By 2004, a $189 million bond gave 6 new schools, the DSC, campus addition, and some other improvements. By 2011, almost $300 million, got 4 new schools, completed 2 comprehensive high schools, did remodernization and improvement to 15 campuses. And then the most recent bond, 2017, just shy of $450 million, built 3 new schools, complete reconstruction of Socorro High School, many improvements and additions to 3 other high schools, 16 auxiliary gyms at some of our elementaries, support service additions, athletic improvements to 5 of our high schools, and currently under construction, SAC 2. for some in-depth details on the 2017 bond, I'm going to ask Ms. Fierro if she would please come to the podium.
Good evening. As Dr. Carmen mentioned, this presentation was given to the Facilities Advisory Committee. So you will see some of the items are not updated because it was presented before, but I will give you that update on those ongoing projects at that time. For Socorro High School, we have package 1 completed and approved by the board. Package 2, we currently are in the punch list and close out documents. Our goal is to bring this item, final payment and final deductive change order, this coming December, the latest January 2024. For the new construction at Cactus Trails Elementary, that one is complete and approved by the board. New combo. This item, we're bringing the final payment and final deductive change order in December, this coming December for board approval. We currently are in the punch list and closeout documents. For support services, DSC technology, this project has been completed and final payment approved by the board. For support services, maintenance and operations, this project is in design phase and the anticipated construction completion is December of 2024. For support services transportation, canopy structure, this project has been completed and been approved by the board. High school development, Bondwood High School, this project has been completed and it was approved by the board. El Dorado High School, this project has been completed and final payment and final deductive change order has been approved by the board. High school development in America's High School, completed and final payment approved by the board. For the elementary auxiliary gyms at 16 campuses, this project has been completed. The anticipated completion was 2022, and the final payment has been approved by the board. The athletic improvements at the high schools, this project has been completed and approved by the board. For the ongoing athletic new student activity complex, the anticipated completion, it's now May of 2024. We currently under construction.
I think at this time, Dr. Cruz, probably with the assistance of Juan Jaime, will talk about some growth.
Good evening, Board President Nahida, members of the board, Dr. Carmen. So as you know, every year we review the kind of growth or decrease in growth that the district is experiencing. Over several years, with the exception of COVID, the district has experienced high growth rate. Currently, as of snapshot, our enrollment is 47,352. We actually saw a decrease this year, something that we did not anticipate. Those with the largest gains in enrollment were Socorro High School, the Eastlake High School, and Eastlake Middle School, of course. And those that lost enrollment were America's High School, Clark, and Desert Wind, which there are reasons for that. When we're looking at growth, there are several factors. It's a multifaceted approach that we utilize to manage growth in the district. So at the time of this presentation, and every year, we manage growth using new construction, boundary changes, portables, overflows, and then programming, such as our pre-K hubs and academies. We propose for the 23-24 school year for a couple of boundary changes. One of those was the creation of the Colonel Ben Narbeth attendance boundary. It impacted part of the area students that would attend Sushuk, and then a small portion for Loma Verde. That was our 50th campus, and they would be going to Colonel Ben Narbeth as they did. We also created, or proposing the creation of Eastlake Middle School attendance boundary for our 51st campus, Eastlake Middle School. The intent of that was to relieve the overflow that was occurring in the 23-24 school year. We had a very high rate of overflow at Enzer Middle School, and they were going to Clark and Desert Wind, which is now why we see part of that decrease in enrollment there. As we looked at enrollment by feeder pattern, it was obvious that the classroom capacities, not including the portables, that we were already at a level where we needed to be very creative. We had to consider boundary changes, portables, programming, et cetera. We were at over 90% capacity at many of the campuses. The Eastlake feeder pattern was addressed with Eastlake Middle School. And then we also had large overages at Pebble Hills, the Pebble Hills feeder pattern, which we later also recommended moving portables to assist with that. And we saw that across all the enrollment feeder patterns where we had at least 90% or overage in every feeder pattern almost. So at the time, the majority of the district portables were located in the eastern part of the district for Eastlake and Americas. And our middle schools, the majority were located in the eastern part of the district for also Eastlake and Americas feeder patterns. At the high school, the majority were located in the western part of the district at Montwood and Americas. We made recommendations for the 23-24 school year to relocate several portables to address those growing areas. It's always the district's goal and desire to educate all of our students in up-to-date facilities and in brick-and-mortar facilities. Unfortunately, this is one of the solutions that we rely on in order to manage that rapid growth. We also overflow students. At the time of the presentation, we had 361 students that were overflowing to other campuses. Currently, we have much less, as expected. We have 81 overflows. The elementary overflows, most of the students were from Carrasco and Cactus Trails in the Pebble Hills feeder pattern. At the middle school, they were mostly at John Enser and Eastlake in the Eastlake feeder pattern. And we also rely on pre-K hubs. So at the time of this recommendation, we recommended that pre-K hubs be located for the 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds at various campuses to accommodate the number of students at each campuses. And where there was no room, and then there was room, we relocated those students to those hubs. This has since been updated, and so we adjusted those pre-K hub lists as we have gone through the year during the summer and planning. We also rely on programming. We opened 2 academies in the 22-23 school year, and we were recommending 4 new academies in the 23-24 school year, which we're very excited have opened. Enrollment has increased at 4 of the 6 academies, so we're very excited about that. The strategy has worked. So when we look at current developments and the growth that we can expect with subdivisions, we had the current subdivisions that were filed since 2020, we were expecting 7,386 units. And those had been filed. 37% of the lots had been sold, giving us 1,009 students. The growth to date at the time, we had 611 lots in the Americas feeder pattern, bringing us 105 students. Eastlake had 4,732, bringing us 343 students. I'll skip down to Pebble Hills, the other large number, 1,072 lots, bringing us 393 students. Overall, we gained 1,009 students from those developments. And today, that number has increased to 1,650. Those for potential
Dr. Cruz,
growth.
what was that number again? 1,000?
1,650. So current development's potential growth, meaning around 2 years out, we would expect 1,705. Of course, this is an estimate based on the unoccupied lots and the number of potential new students. So we don't actually know that number until they show up. These are anticipated numbers. And then looking at future developments, we had areas in the Eastlake feeder pattern to receive the most development. And currently, Montwood and Pebble Hills are built out. Americas has some remaining growth on the far east border, and El Dorado has remaining growth on the northeastern border. Again, this is 3 to 5 years out with 8,133 total lots. Potential new students would be over 3,000 students. These are subdivisions that are under review, which would take 1 to 1.5 years just to begin the process of anyone building on them. Open enrollment, students coming from outside the district at the time of this presentation was 1,416. Current numbers as of snapshot date is 1,480 students this year. As far as outgoing students are concerned, we lost 8,603 students, a very high number, more than expected. Currently, outgoing students, we have 583 going to Isleta this year, 277 going to IDEA, and 82 going to Harmony. Those are the highest numbers in that report. Dr. Carmen?
Thank you, ma'am. So based on the growth and the anticipated growth, we discussed some recommendations with the Facilities Advisory Committee. At 3 campuses that had a large number of portable or modular classrooms, Enzer with 12, Drugan 24, and Sioux Shook Elementary 12 classrooms. We did an estimate based on the needed square footage for the classrooms and restrooms if applicable, and based on that square footage cost estimate, put some numbers together of what it would cost if we wanted to add on those classrooms at those campuses so that our students would not be in portables and modulars. And you can see we totaled it out for those 3 campuses based on what we anticipate now, about $22.5 million. And then we estimated, because construction costs only seem to be going up, 8% yearly increase. You can see the longer we wait, the more it's going to cost. And each of these campuses, you can see we have the space for these classrooms. Sioux Shook has plenty of room, but you can see the portables there, modulars there. Enzer, you can see the portables spread throughout. And then you have Portable City there at Drugan, where instead we could have an addition to that building. Then based on the anticipated growth, it looks as if we're looking about 5 years out, that 2 additional elementary schools and 1 middle school would accommodate the growth. 1 elementary, presumably in the Eastlake feeder pattern, and then an elementary and a middle school in the Pebble Hills feeder pattern to accommodate the anticipated growth. The estimated cost for the elementary schools currently just under $74 million, and the cost to build a middle school roughly $45 million. Again, we apply the 8% yearly increase, and again, construction costs we anticipate would just go up the longer we wait to build these. Additionally, here is an overview of Mission Early College High School. I think you're all aware that campus has a main office, but then all the buildings are portables. So those students, the first early college high school in the area, they don't have a brick and mortar campus. So we presented that as 2 separate options to the Facilities Advisory Committee. One option we discussed and kind of fleshed out with some estimates based on square footage is if we built an entirely new campus for Mission Early College, including a gym, based on that estimated square footage, $14.5 million is the estimated construction cost as of today. Again, applying that 8% anticipated increase to construction costs, it could be as much as about $20 million by the year 27, 28. We also discussed another option. Options and keys are in what is formerly not a storage building, but an industrial building. And they've done great work to make it palatable. But the discussion was, if we were to house those in one area, basically give a wing to Mission Early College, a wing to Options, and a wing to Keys. Probably one principal could oversee it with an assistant principal for each, thereby also being a little more efficient with our campus administration. Looking at that option and the estimated square footage, you can see what it costs, about $27 million currently, and again, just go up each year. At Escontrias, that campus has two separate areas. The one area kind of there in the center of this picture is the newer building, grades 2 through 5, I think. To the far right, one of those buildings there, where the Early Childhood Center is almost 100 years old. It existed 40 years prior to the creation of Socorro ISD. And then on this picture to the left, there are some old storage buildings, may have been office buildings at one point, but not really utilized at this point in time. So the discussion in getting our students out of a 100-year-old building would be to knock down where those old storage buildings are, add on a wing for our early childhood, and the estimate based on that square footage right now, a little over $16 million. We also discussed that historical building, possibly turning it into a museum, making it a showcase. Would not have to be open every single day, but that would be a good way to preserve some of the history, but not to have students on that side of town in a 100-year-old school building. So at the end of the day, we met with the Facilities Advisory Committee. We discussed each of these options, put the numbers to it, the new classroom additions for the 3 campuses, 2 new elementaries, a new middle school, a new Mission Early College standalone, the option if we combined Mission Early College with Options and Keys, and then the addition to Escontrias. Again, you can see all those numbers. This was presented to the Facilities Advisory Committee, increasing each year as we anticipate construction costs going up. This slide is a new slide. As we got further in the discussions with the Facilities Advisory Committee, they were leaning heavily toward keeping Options and Keys where they were, but believe that Mission Early College students did deserve a brick and mortar building. So we put this slide together because this is an update based on those ongoing conversations. Looking at all of those additions, the new buildings, the new construction, that total, if we were to do it today, would be about $172 million. Again, assuming construction costs go up by 8% a year, the longer we wait, we could be looking at about $240 million. At this point in time, we would be happy to entertain any questions from board members regarding all of these projected additions, the student growth, any information we presented tonight.
Ms. Pettis, you said that they did a estimate. You had a company come in or somebody from TASB you said you hired and to give us estimates on the costs, the breakdown of the costs.
We had a facility assessment approved by the board that they came in and they examined all the buildings and every component
And how detailed is it? Are we going to end up without restrooms in a building? Are we going to end up, just having to pay for something later? That's what I was looking at and looking for that document where it breaks it down so we know what the taxpayers know what they're going to vote for.
Mind if I address that? So in our next workshop, we will do a presentation on that facility assessment specifically. It's the dashboard information that we sent out to the board that gave you full access to it. But it goes very, very detailed information. It goes down to, we're changing out things inside the restroom. There was a count on restroom stalls needing to be replaced. It is very detailed by campus, by area.
Was there a specific component that you were
Well,
concerned about so that we can?
It just comes up and surprises us, you know. I'll use Nardbeth, you know. You're talking about building a building with empty shells, but then you're concerned about portables. And that's a bond project. That's a new build, but yet you took $3.2 million out of the general fund to finish building it out when it was a bond project. It should have been bond money.
So
You know,
the
and then we just did a complete overhaul at El Dorado, but then, well, we didn't do the dining area, but we did it at other campuses. And that was a $500,000 buyout there. You know, East Lake Middle, nobody included tables for the dining area for them. You know, it was $115,000 there. It's these little pennies that come out of the general fund that come back, and general fund takes it out of the children. That's away from the children directly when we had this bond set. That's why I want the detail. You know, I understand that El Dorado High School was built without teacher restrooms. How can we have that? We had auxiliary gyms was built without restrooms for the children and without water fountains. We'd have to make sure that we don't have that hole come in.
I completely agree with you, sir. I personally would not want to have anything chopped up like that. So that is part of the process, is making sure that the facility assessment itself is going to tell us where our needs are in the current buildings. But whenever we go into towards building a new facility, we do have a different set of eyes now that we have seen certain things gone a certain way. And I can't attest to anything that was done with the previous administration, but I can assure you that knowing that now, we know what to look for. And so we look forward to having absolutely beautiful buildings for our kiddos.
And
So
I
I
understand-
completely understand you, sir.
Even now, we have an external auditor looking into the bond projects, and that'll define, okay, what happened before, what happened under this administration. So we need that to be available also for the public to review. We have to be transparent. The word was mentioned earlier, transparency. We need to have everything available for the taxpayer to understand. You know, we are under 2 TEA investigations. One of them's complete. And we haven't given that information to the taxpayer. All this stuff they need to know, who's running the district and what's going to happen to the money afterwards. So we need to make everything transparent.
We will take that into
Especially at
consideration, sir.
$800 million. Because we're going to have cost overruns, and next thing we're paying $1 billion out for this. No, we're going to have to be held accountable 100%. And so the next board that comes in doesn't say, oh, these guys screwed up. No.
We completely understand,
That's the
sir.
bar. I'm raising the bar. We're going to do it right if we're going to move forward with this. But we have to be transparent with the taxpayer, 100%.
I am with you completely, sir. I'm, God forbid that I leave this place, but if I do, I would not want somebody to say, well, the previous person, we leave the place better than we got here. So I'm completely with you, sir.
And I will hold everybody accountable to this. And I still expect retaliation from this district. It shouldn't happen, but I'm going to still hold people accountable for what's going on here and to make sure that we do things right.
Yes, sir.
I just want to make sure that we're not running into the same issues with SAC 2 and a lot of the aforementioned stuff that Mr. Castellano mentioned. And I mean, that's why we're having a lot of these discussions, which shouldn't have taken place. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's the taxpayers that are paying for it, and we got to be right by it. But you know, I agree. We got to wait till the auditor comes and releases those findings and make better decisions based off of that, and that'll also guide us where we need to be for the next board, for the next individuals that are sitting where you guys are at, whenever or wherever that may be. But we just need to be right by it, even if it means unfortunate things continue to happen. But
Thank you. Just recommendations for next time for our next bond meeting that we have. I know that you have a lot, like the new classroom additions that we have on there. Just so that to ensure that we're maximizing the use of all of our facilities. That way, as we're opening or building, that we're not going to close down or underutilize any of the facilities. So, for example, you all mentioned possibility for, Enzer, building, taking out the portables, do the build there. With East Lake Middle School, did that help at all? Will boundaries help? Same thing for John Drugan. We have Portable City there, but I also heard in a previous presentation just today that Clark is now shrinking because we did open up Eastlake Middle School, because now there's not so many overflows, just to see, is there capacity and what is that gonna look like? Will that help with boundary adjustments, or do we need these many additions? That way we're truly, again, for the taxpayer, making sure that we're building them appropriately. For Dr. Sushuk, same thing. You know, it's a huge campus. Does it need to be built out, or did Ben Norberth, and absorb some of that? But also I see that there's a new elementary campus for that area. So looking forward, whenever that new elementary campus comes out, projecting what do the boundaries look like? Will it also help Sushuk? And if so, do we need that additional build there? So just projecting out, that way we feel very comfortable if we do approve, that everything is planned out for multiple years.
Okay, definitely.
Thank
So
you.
we look towards having information on facilities and finance, if I'm not mistaken. So is there anything else that maybe you're losing sleep over at night that we can help prepare and have that ready for you at the next meeting? I'm so open to suggestions here.
My only comment, Ms. Bettis, is, I agree wholeheartedly with what Ms. Macias is saying. As we look at our neighboring districts, Isleta, where the growth is no longer, right, El Paso and Isleta, we're continuously hearing about the consolidation that's happening over there and the struggles with having to identify campuses to close, which regardless of, costs associated with it, regardless of, sometimes the only perspective that is heard is the impact to the community that campus was serving. I mean, sometimes those decisions are difficult, but necessary, but we still hear about the impact to the community. And so I just want us to proceed as prudently as possible.
Definitely, sir.
To avoid, those situations coming any sooner than they need to. And it's just by, making sure we place these campuses in the right locations, and that we do consider things like consolidation or, a decrease in enrollment in these areas, and how can we capitalize the existing facilities versus just, building a new one, and then we have, an older campus that is no longer being maximized, but we have the new one there as well, and then we end up having to make those
That's a good
difficult
point.
decisions as well. So
Yes, sir.
that's it. Any other questions or comments?
Nothing. As we go through our demographer study, when are we gonna get that information back?
So initially, the first phase of it will be in early January at the very, very latest. And so that will be presented as we get closer to it. After that, as it was stated on the list of dates, I think it's February that we'd have to call an election. We will have the basic overall demographic information. The feeder pattern information will be in around that same time, late February.
And that's gonna be very important. Once you get the information from the demographer, you're gonna see that just our birth rates are naturally declining. And that's gonna help us to see where we're projected to underutilize some of our facilities. There's just not enough, or not the same amount of children being born. Socorro ISD, we're blessed that we have all of the growth, so therefore any children being born, they're coming our way. But within a couple of years, where are we gonna truly have, those declines? And that way we're ready for that, and we know that we don't wanna underutilize. I love the programming because it is bringing students back into our buildings that were, we had 13 classrooms open, now very few. So just that way we're doing it very strategically, so that later on we're not having difficult conversations where we're consolidating.
Right, and that was actually one of the main concerns with getting the demographer as part of the agenda, was are we going to have that information with enough time to make informed decisions and give you enough time to think about that, process it with the rest of that information? So I was very pleased that they were going to have that in line with our plan here, but we did put some fire under them.
The fire going. We need it before January would be great. That way we're ready to go in February. Thank you.
Yes.
Anything else? No, with there being no further business before the board, the date is Monday, November 6th, the time is 7:20, and we are adjourned.